And get the PowerPoint up. All right, welcome everyone. This is the one that you've been waiting for. So last week finished off all of the training across the state for knowing how to use Unified Insights, the interventions module. And we've been saying for a while that that interventions module is what we will use to facilitate the summer reading and math camp data entries so that you're not manually having to mark attendance on a sheet of paper to send in and not having to, have goals in a separate area to see if your kids are making progress or not. This is going to be the culmination. So in this presentation, we're going to speak both from the ARI side and the OMI side, what the requirements are and the expectations along those deadlines. And then we'll show you inside of Unified Insights and see some screenshots of where you'll need to be looking for the data. So to get us started, we're going to kick off with Miss Bonnie Short.
And I just want to bring you to this slide because this is directly from the Alabama Literacy Act. And it just emphasizes that we're not asking you to do this just because it's something we want you to do. It is coming directly from the legislation that came out of the Alabama Literacy Act for us to collect summer reading data. We'll go to the next slide. More information, and we have to take that data that you have, and we have to provide a report to the governor's office and several different entities. So as I talk today, even though this slide looks very complex, I really want to make an effort for you to think as simply as possible when we're looking at all of this, because it really is a very simple process, but we have some wording that we've used in the past that's creating an interference. So if you look here, you'll see the Student Reading Improvement Plan template that the Alabama Reading Initiative, along in collaboration with other groups, created to help support student reading improvement plans in an RTI process. And this document should look very familiar to you. Many of you adopted this very document. Some of you altered it a little bit, but this is exactly where the information was taken to go into the electronic format. And if you look at the boxes on the outside, all of those are quotes from the Alabama Literacy Act. This was before we even had the Numeracy Act in action. And so you can see these different sections in here were put in to help support you in your navigation of the Alabama Literacy Act. So we're going to move on to the next slide, and I'm going to break it down. So if you look on the left-hand side of the screen, you see the 4 different pages that made up the Student Reading Improvement Plan. But as you look at pages 1 and 2, that translates in Unified Insight as the plan. They use that wording as plan in Unified Insights. And then as you look at pages 3 and 4 of the Student Reading Improvement Plan on paper, it translates as intervention on Unified Insights. And so sometimes when we talk about intervention programs, that's a little bit different. This is the intervention platform, and it's using that information in the bottom 2 pages to help collect the data of your intervention program to see, are we making the kind of gains we want to for students? So we move straight into how are we going to set our goals for students. You have one of those 6 assessments that you use right now for your early years assessments. You're going to take your early years assessment data from the end of the school year. You're going to look at those specific subtests that you provide your students, and you're just going to choose 2 to 3 measurable goals. We don't want you to have to take the composite score or figure out what the composite score is, because as we really started to think about your summer reading camp data, we want this to impact instruction. And if you're looking at just a composite score, you have no place to go. You don't know where you're going to do to move instruction. But if we focus in on those subtests, and I'll move right on to the next slide, if we focus in on those subtests, we're going to be able to really hone in on what we need to do for students. So at the very beginning of summer reading camp, you're looking and you're analyzing your end of the year data, and you're setting student learning goals based on the lowest deficits. You're going to enter your end of the year measure for your student learning goals into the summer reading portal for intervention. We don't want you to do all of them. Choose 2 to 3 that you think you're going to be able to focus on in summer learning camp and be able to move your students during that time period, the 60 plus hours of reading instruction and intervention you have for your students. You're going to monitor attendance of your students daily, and there's opportunity for you to add any notes of importance. And then bi-weekly, which if you're doing a 4-week summer learning camp, it's falling in the middle of camp. You're going to progress monitor your students on those same goals that you have. You're only going to progress monitor on those same set of learning goals, not the whole summer, not the whole early years assessment, but just those subtests. And then at the end of camp, you're going to administer the end of summer assessment subtest that you determined for those goals. You'll enter that final summer data and any notes of importance, and that is all you have to do. It should be very easy for you to meet the completion of all of your data the last day of summer camp, because you can enter this information all along. However, we have set the deadline for it on September 16th, which is when all your other reporting is due to us. Thank you. This is what it's going to look like on your screen when you go to enter the data. And you'll notice there's a target right there next to all of those. That target score is coming directly from your early years assessment. So when you choose your summer reading camp assessment for the student that you have, you're going to be looking at what grade they're in and what is your assessment. So I'm going to choose first grade, Ames Web Plus, and those target scores are going to filter in there for you. You don't have to do anything with it. And then let's say I'm really focusing on a student who hasn't mastered letter naming yet, and they don't have all their letter sounds. Let's say those are my 2 goals. I'm going to skip the first 2 goals. I'm not going to put anything in those boxes. I'm only going to put them in there for letter naming and letter sounds. And those numbers that I'm going to put in there are from your end of the year assessment. If for some reason you've changed assessments and you don't have your old one anymore, then you can just do a new assessment for the beginning of summer school and then implement it. But it's intended so that you're not having to duplicate data. So you're going to start with the end of the year's assessment, those 2 subsections, letter naming and letter sound, and then you're going to move on. And so each time you do the progress monitoring, you're going to add in that new score. We're also going to be adding in oral reading fluency as a goal. So it would make a lot of sense if you're working on those aspects with your students. Maybe they have the decoding. Maybe they have letter naming and letter sound really well. Maybe they're great with phonemic awareness, but we know we're really honing in on that accuracy part. Oral reading fluency might be a great addition to couple with that. You might also add in decoding. So that may be an instance where you want 3 goals. So just think about what's going to be the lowest deficiency for that specific student to add in your goals. And so your goals can be marked individually or by bulk, but more than likely your goals are going to be unique for that specific student. And you're going to enter those target scores. Once you enter the first progress monitoring, you're going to be able to see out to the side the change that student has. Did their score go up or did their score go down? And then what the total growth is. So it's going to calculate all that stuff for you. In the past, we've had you doing some of those calculations. Stacy has worked her magic and she's made it to where it's going to do it for you. That's all you have to do for summer learning, for reading.
And it's time for math. As with literacy, there are provisions in the Numeracy Act for reporting. Beginning this year, on or before September 30th, every single LEA shall report in writing to the department information pertaining to this current school year. moving on, the uniform format is really what we're discussing. This is the expectation for every single LEA is to use this platform. And the second part is just to list the various individuals and groups that will receive this report. There are 10 reports that are listed in the Numeracy Act that are to be completed. There are 3 reports that are not going to be required as of September 30th. And those are listed here: dyscalculia identification, students identified with a deficit per the fractional reasoning screener data, and the number of individuals earning a mathematics coach endorsement. The Elementary Mathematics Task Force has not yet identified resources in the top 2 areas for dyscalculia or for fractional reasoning. That screener does not exist. And the Post-Secondary Mathematics Task Force is in the process of creating guidelines for that, the 4 courses in the mathematics coach endorsement. So to that end, these 3 reports are not to be submitted at this time, even if there's a chance that you might know or you might have information that an individual student might have been identified with dyscalculia according to tools that you have. Because the Elementary Mathematics Task Force has not communicated tools to identify all students across the state with dyscalculia, we will not require any of these reports at this time. So we'll take some time and break down every single subsequent report that is to be submitted. You'll see a screenshot at the top as to what it looks like. The name, the short name that you'll see in PowerSchool is a description of the longer name that you'll see actually in the law. So the first one is deficiency on the mathematics benchmark assessment, that formative assessment that is given 3 times a year plus summer makes 4. So if a student has an identified deficiency, simply click yes. If not, then just don't do anything, no data entry if not. The school year should be a drop down, 23-24. The administration is either the end of the year or the summer, just select depending on the time of year you're uploading this data. And these are the tools for which we will receive the information. These are the vendors. Amplify, which is M-Class, the Alabama edition. Curriculum Associates or iReady, and Renaissance, Star Math and Star CBM. Select one of those. If other is selected, then the LEA is to input all the data. The system will receive data from those vendors that are listed on the recommended list as per the Elementary Mathematics Task Force. The next one is the incoming students in grades K through 2 with an early numeracy deficiency using the early numeracy screener. You can include grade 3 if you would like, that is optional. So again, use yes for the identified deficiency. The drop down is the school year. Choose this school year, 23-24. Drop down for the grade, K through 2. Again, you can use 3rd grade if you choose, that is optional. And these identified vendors, Forefront and Curriculum Associates, are to be used for that administration. So there's a drop down for either one of those for this school year, the 23-24 school year. The next report to be submitted is the students eligible who were invited and attending the summer math program. So again, yes, select yes if the student was invited. That means the student has an identified deficiency in the area of mathematics. The school year, the current 23-24 school year, select the appropriate grade level, K through 5. Now for the hours of mathematics camp offered, we need to know the total number of hours that were available. So we need you to compute that and input just the total number of hours. And there's an example here. If, for example, your summer school is administered over a 6-hour day, if it were administered 5 days a week for 4 weeks, That would be 120 hours, so put in the number 120 hours. And then of those 120 hours, how many hours was that student present? And then input that number. Retained for math deficiency, you may have students who are retained for a number of different reasons, and math is just one of those reasons. If math is any consideration at all for that student being retained in the grade, then use yes and the school year. The next few reports use data that is validated through the LEA. So the first is the short name is the grade level plus on ACAP, which means which students were deemed proficient. And by the law, proficient is defined as scoring at a level 3 or 4 on ACAP. So although the ACAP information is going to be calculated by the ALSDE, each school district is to validate this information prior to its submission in the annual report. Same with this next report. It's called Starting 5th Grade Below Level on ACAP. So if you look at your current list of 5th graders, go back to their ACAP scores from last year. As a 4th grader, below grade level is defined as scoring on level 1 or level 2. So again, of your current 5th graders, look to see last year how many or which students scored a level 1 or 2, and you input that information into the system. The next is called ACAP growth. So again, look at your current 5th grade students, go back to their 3rd grade year. So of the 5th graders who are deemed proficient on ACAP, meaning they score a level 3 or 4, only those students scoring a level 3 or 4 go back to their 3rd grade ACAP score and see which of those students were scoring deficient, meaning a level 1 or 2. So again, 5th grade, 3s and 4s, go back to when they took the ACAP as a 3rd grader, which one of those students earned a score of 1 or 2.
So now that you've heard the requirements from both the ARI side and the OMI side, where does this data live and how will we get it in there? So I want to first start us off in the SIS side of things. So this weekend, and I sent it out in the newsletter that went out this morning, there was an update placed in the Power School that actually brought the updated Numeracy Act page into your servers. So now when you go to a student record, to student academic records, legislative acts page, you have the Literacy Act and the Numeracy Act tabs. On the Numeracy Act tab, you now have all 6 components of the different things that would be required for those reportings. I have highlighted in the red box the 4 items that Dr. Anderson just mentioned that are the required ones for this year. The retention, the summer math camp, the deficiency on both the benchmark assessment and the early numeracy deficiency. I have created you both a printable guide, just like we have with the Literacy Act, that will show you how you can enter this data from the admin portal or from the teacher portal, because it is also available in the teacher side, how you can enter it on one student at a time if needed, or how you can mass upload all records at once for your school or district. So that printable guide has all of those directions. We will be sending you this PowerPoint presentation, so you will have the link to all these documents in one location. I also created a video that is now up on YouTube, on our YouTube channel, Alabama Power School, on how to navigate, how to find this page, both in the admin portal and the teacher portal, and how you go through and click that add button to see those screenshots that Dr. Anderson just shared. It's a very easy page to navigate and now has been explained. Likewise, we have the Legislative Acts page. Now, we went over this page in detail in a webinar at the end of school last year. And in fact, on this slide, I linked you back to that video of that training that we did on May 25th of last year, walking you through all the requirements of this page. The only addition to this page since that webinar is we do now have the checkbox for Lexi's Law, so that you can indicate those students who have demonstrated proficiency in cursive handwriting. All of this page can as well be entered in a single student record from the admin and the teacher portal, or it can be entered in mass through a file upload. And we have the Literacy Act page that has been, the printable guide that has been updated with those directions. We have a video on the YouTube channel showing you how to access this page, both in the admin portal and in the teacher portal. And we also created a separate video showing you how you can add all the Lexi's Law information, which is a pretty easy one to add in mass, really across the whole district if you wanted to. So that starts it off in the SIS. Now, how do we get this into the summer camp and the intervention? So we're going to look at both math and reading and what these look like. And I will go ahead and preface and say, currently, right now, as of today, these summer camps are hidden from you. And there's a reason for that. For one vendor on the reading side, we are still waiting on their cut scores to be sent to us. So as soon as we have those in, we will be adding these, and we are looking currently for releasing these next Monday, May 6th. So we will do an email blast out so that you know when they are ready so that you can start taking a look at them. But to provide you with some screenshots and a video, I want to explain the architecture of how these summer camps are created. So looking at math first, you are going to see 5 separate summer camps in your intervention bank. We have them broken down by grade level so we can kind of look at the metrics holistically across grade levels, across districts, and across states. I have created a video, 2 videos actually, that are currently up on our YouTube channel. I loaded them this weekend. One that shows you how you're going to use the summer math and reading interventions inside of Unified Insight, so you can go back and familiarize yourself with how this flow is going to go in case you have not been able to turn everything around or you wanted some like refreshers from the training that you had across the state the last few weeks. A second video is how you will need to roster students inside of the SIS for summer camp. So an important note to make here is that you are going to need to build a roster inside of PowerSchool SIS at your schools where you will schedule students for the summer camps that you want them to fall into. Now, there are multiple approaches that you can take with this, and I explain it all in detail in that video because it is going to be way longer than this 1 hour that we have for this webinar to show you all of that. Most districts are already using this theory of rostering classes within their schools to get things like their special education teachers' caseloads into a roster so they can check grades, attendance. It's that idea of scheduling a period outside of the bell schedule with that schedule filler class, which you can tie students to. Now, the beautiful thing about this is that you can actually go as small or large as you want in the size of these rosters. I've talked to some schools who want to put all of their kids all in just one roster and let it feed into Unified Insights, and use the collaborative approach of all the teachers who are going to be facilitating these camps will be able to go in and update the data on the students. You can go that wide if you want to, or if you want to get very granular and say, no, Stacy Royster is going to be over these 20 kids in summer camp, so I'm going to create a roster just for her in the SIS and let it feed in, and that's the only one she's going to be seeing are those 20 kids. And Karen Anderson's going to have these other 20 kids. But we know a lot of times in summer camps, there's a lot of flowing flexibility where you might need multiple teachers to cover multiple different groups of children on any given basis. So I can see that it might be more beneficial for you as a district to have that one roster group of students than the multiple, but that's a decision you get to make and make it the best way that you want for your district. Should you need to have conversations about how to structure that more individually, please feel free to reach out to me or any of the PowerSchool coaches and we can help you get that figured out. So when you have these 5 math camps by grade level, when you see them in there, you'll be able to go to the intervention bank, click on that button that says use this plan, and it'll bring up this box that you see in the bottom right hand corner that says start a new intervention. In the intervention name, you do not need to touch that name. I know in the training when they showed you how to create an intervention, they told you that you can make it unique to you. There's no need, and we really don't want you to do that. And I mentioned that in the video as well. You want to leave these collectively because what's going to happen is there's 2 levels of security as far as can you see an intervention And can you see students in intervention? So what I would do is, as a district, as soon as you see these, somebody at the district level can go ahead and start each of the grade level interventions. All you need is one student in the intervention to go ahead and get it started for the district. And guys, if you don't even know who your students are, you can pick a token student. So I would always used to use my son as a kid to add in, because if I add them in to get this started, I can always delete him out after we get all the kids in and before we start putting data in. But it allows us to start planning and prepping for this. So you just get one student in there. Then you'll go to the staff tab, and this is where you'll want to add in all staff that you want to be able to see what I'm going to show you on the next slide, which is all of the information about the camps. So 2 layers of security here. Layer number 1 is this staff on this screen. By adding a staff member here, they are going to be able to see that the intervention is created and assigned to them. Security number 2 is, do they have the student rostered? If they have the student rostered, they will be able to see that student inside of the intervention. If they do not have the student rostered, they will see the intervention, but not that student's data. So let's go back to the concept of, I'm going to put all 100 students in my school in one rostered class in CIS to feed into the intervention. So if you have all 100 in that one group, then every staff member that's assigned to that roster in CIS and over here in the intervention will be able to see all 100 kids. If you separate it out and say, okay, I'm going to create maybe individual grade levels or different groups of those classes in the CIS. So Stacy's only going to see 20. When I log into the intervention, I will see that there is an intervention there if I've been assigned to it, and I might see that there's a count of 100 kids. But when I look at the bottom and actually see the kids that are in the intervention, I will only see the 20 that I have on my roster at the CIS. So you get to control who gets to see what through this staff scheduling and through the roster scheduling. The next thing that you would have to do is set your schedule. When does your camp start? When does your camp end? That's all it takes to get the intervention actually started. And this is for both math and reading. Once you get the intervention started, these are the screens that will then populate for you as you are running the intervention. So when we talk about math, there are 2 things that you have to collect throughout that summer camp for reporting purposes: attendance and observations. So each day you'll go in and mark attendance for your students to see, were they there, fully present, were they tardy, only their partial time, or did they not come at all? As you start putting that data in, that metric in the top left-hand side, you will see all of that data start to populate. You'll see a meeting completion. You'll see an attendance rate. You'll see student observations of who's engaged, partially engaged, or disengaged. And then you will see the cards at the bottom of the screen of all the students that you have been rostered for. So I want you to think about this. Let's say that you're a principal at the school, and they put you as a staff member who can see this intervention. So when that principal logs into Unified Insights and see this intervention that has begun, they're going to see that top part. If they have been either put on the roster or put in as a school admin in interventions so that they can see everybody in the school, then they will be able to see every student's data at the bottom. So those different layers come into play. Some people might only see the top diagnostics. Some will see diagnostics and students below it, depending on how you've been entered in your security rights. Now for summer reading camp, we have a lot more granular in here. So when you go to search the intervention bank for your summer reading camps, you are going to see those K1, 2, and 3. So 4 different interventions by grade level for each vendor. So you would see Ames Web, kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd. You will see Star, kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd. So depending on who your vendor is, you will need to search by your vendor and then the appropriate grade levels. Same thing. Once you identify the actual intervention that you're going to be using, you would click on Use this plan, and you would start adding your student, your staff, and your schedule to these plans. Now, when it comes to adding students to plans, no matter if it's reading or if it's math, there are multiple ways to add students in there. Literally, you have a list here that you can search one student at a time. In the video, I show you how to add students individually. I also show you how you can go and grab groups of students from within dashboards in the actual Unified Insights platform. So there are multiple ways that you will be able to get these in there. And I will also be creating some videos throughout the month of May that will show you little tidbits of how to go different ways to grab students and work with these interventions and place them on our Alabama Power School website in the same manner that we put those videos out there for our summer or for our student plans. So you will see here, once you create the summer reading camp interventions, you're going to get the same metrics at the top of the screen, which is going to give you your meeting completion, your attendance, and your observations. You will see extra data inside of the student cards because you will be progress monitoring goals. So as Bonnie mentioned earlier, when you first start at the beginning of camp and you enter in that end of year assessment score, it will compare that score to the target that has been pre-populated for all vendors that tell where their proficiency benchmarks are. So as you go and progress monitor throughout the intervention, you will see these new data points populate so that you can see if this student is growing or declining in their interventions. Now, some had asked, what's going to be the requirement? And Bonnie stated that it would be bi-weekly. Is that correct, Bonnie?
You need to have at least one progress monitoring. So you're going to have beginning of camp, you'll have ending of camp, and then you'll have at least one progress monitoring.
So that's what we're going to say, the bare minimum requirements. If you progress monitor more often, if you make that choice to do so, those can be entered in here as well so that you get as many data points as you need for you to do and make the best decisions for your students. So let's talk about how do we mark this attendance and how do we mark these observations and how do we mark those goals. So for attendance, if you'll notice at the top of this screen, so let me go back one screen. When you look at those cards, if you look very kind of at the top of that screenshot, you'll see 4 tabs: student overview, attendance, observations, and goals. Clicking through those tabs brings you to these screens here. So clicking attendance brings us this. You can mark attendance daily in here, student by student, or there is a bulk options located right below the attendance tab where you can mark everybody present at one time, everybody absent at one time, however you need to. So there are individual and bulk options for all of these. For what's going to be very important on the math side is that you can actually denote how many minutes that student attended because you are having to record how many hours they spent throughout there. So that could also be added in bulk if you know that everybody was there. So if you had a 60-minute math session and everybody was there and everybody was there for 60 minutes, you can bulk add that all at one time. One item to note, when you schedule these interventions and you have to put that start and end date in, when you come back to this screen and at the top under selected meetings, you see how it says Friday, April 26th in this screenshot. That drop down is what changes you to go day to day. It does pull in weekends. And I know a lot of people go, Stacey, why does it pull in weekends? Nobody has school on weekends. Well, actually they do. Power School is an international product, so we're not the only ones that use this. And a lot of your East Asian schools go on Saturdays. And so for us, once you create your schedule, you will have to come in those selected meetings, if you'll drop down and choose the weekend dates, see the delete meeting button on the right-hand side of this page, you actually delete those weekend dates out so that you don't progress monitor or check attendance or goals or anything on that, and it'll make sure that your attendance calculations come out correct by removing those out of there as soon as you create it. Observations. So 3 observations can be made on students. You can mark them as being fully engaged, partially engaged, or disengaged from the intervention. So just like with attendance, you can come in each day, you can grab all students, and you can make that bulk selection. So if your kids are all on top of it and they're fully engaged, you can mark everybody in mass as fully engaged. And maybe you had everybody, but let's say 3 students fully engaged. Mark all of them, and then come back and mark the ones who were fully, swap them to partial. And then that way you kind of get this collective total so you can see how much effort the student actually put in during these interventions so that you can see, is it making sense? Because one of the things you want to look for is kids that you are saying are fully engaged but are not making any progress in that intervention. Oh, and then the goals was back on the slide that Bonnie had, where you would then enter in the actual numeric value of what you are getting from that progress monitoring. So few screens that you will actually work with inside the intervention, but you are going to get tons of data from within there. So we wanted to share this with you and let you know that yes, change is inevitable and growth is optional. We all know that change is going to be coming with updates to legislation, with updates that we get from feedback from districts. And guys, that's what we want everybody to understand. This is our first iteration of this. And trust me, as y'all are emailing us and letting us know what you're seeing on strips and on portfolios and in these interventions, we are taking the feedback back as a group, re-collaborating to see, can we make it easier? Are there some things that we can take off of this because now it's here? So change is still going to be coming, all for the better. This is just our first step toward consolidating all this and getting this flow going for next year. So with that being our presentation, let's now jump back into the meeting. And I know y'all have probably had tons of questions in the chat. So is there anything?
One thing I just want to kind of reiterate based on some conversation that happened. One of them is if you are using a collaborative process in your building, make sure you are obeying your data confidentiality aspects. It's important to make sure you have some sort of process in place to make sure that you are protecting the data of the students that you are working with. And individuals who do not have a vested interest in the outcome of the student data should not be involved in that process. So make sure that that is tight, but at the same time, collaborative processes are important. Some individuals asked about rostering across different schools because some of you have an isolated location within your district. And if you watch the videos that Stacy has provided, she goes into that piece about grabbing various individuals to one location. So that's really, really important. The topic of beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year came up, but now we have a summer term. So keep that in mind that all of the vendors have now provided a summer learning for both reading and math, as I understand it. And so you have that end of summer benchmark testing material that you can use that your vendor is providing. I also saw in the chat, and Kendall, you did a great job of answering things that were in the chat. Teachers from 4 different schools, and then a summer term in the SIS. Some of them said they don't use a summer term in the SIS. Do they have to continue to use that summer term?
And that answer I want to tell everybody is no. You do not have to run a summer school inside of the SIS for this to work. What you're actually going to do is create a course that out of the Bell schedule course in this school year's academic session. So if I'm, XYZ elementary school, I'm going to go into my master schedule right now, and I'm going to go into a period that does not fall into the Bell schedule. So hopefully you have more periods available than you have in your Bell schedule. If not, let me know. I can show you how to get an extra period in there. And I'm going to create that course, and I'm just going to call it summer camp. And in that video, I'll walk you through how to do that. And I'm going to start putting the kids in there. Now, here's something else you need to know. So let's say that I've got 3 elementary schools, and maybe summer camp's going to be held at elementary school A. You can still have the rosters in A, B, and C, even though all the work's going to be at this one location. Because what you'll do is pull those kids down into those rosters at schools A, B, and C. And if I've got teachers from school A and B who's going to work all 3 of those, you're actually going to control that from the staff security side. You're going to flip and say that, hey, they're going to get access to school B and C as well if I'm over here at A. And it'll allow me to pull those teachers to those rosters at any school where I house the kids. They'll all populate into Unified Insights no matter what school the kid is enrolled in. So what we're going to do is do the controlling by the staff instead of the students, because you're going to have way less staff to have to touch than the individual students. So we figured that would be easier for you. And that video that I have worked.
She means her.
Yeah, wait.
She means her. Because she thinks about these things where I would never have thought.
There's a question in the chat about substitutes. How would substitutes input this information in the Power School? Should the LEA just think through that process and
Yes.
designate individuals so that substitutes won't have to do that?
Or the other option is you can add those. It's the same one thing with like substitutes on today's day-to-day basis. If you have a substitute walk in to cover a class, are you deciding to put them into the SIS so that they can do things for the teachers? Or do you just have them wait and when the teacher comes back, they input that data? That's a decision the district will need to make. If they decide that, hey, I need these substitutes to be in day by day entering this information, then you will have to add them as a staff member in your SIS, give them access to Unified Insights so that they can then input that data. Which brings up a point that I need to make sure everybody on this call understands. So I want you to think about this. District leaders, how many of you shut down Power School for your teachers so they can't access it in the summer because you don't want to see a next year's schedule? I know a lot of people who are doing this right here, nodding their head. Guys, when you're running summer camp, they have got to log into SIS, into Teacher Pro, to be able to get over into Unified Insights to input this data. So you're not going to be able to shut down the SIS for them so that they can't see their next year's schedules, because that's not what we're worrying about. We have to have conversations with our users about, hey, we're working on master schedules. You might see these 20 kids. They might be who you have next year. They might not. Do not look at that right now. But you don't need to cut down the whole Power Teacher Pro side and say you can have no access because we don't want you to see that, because they have to have this access to be able to log into Unified Insights to do this work this summer. So please make sure you have those district conversations so that you see that.
There's another question in the chat about math intervention. Will teachers need to document math intervention? And at this time, the expectation is to document the end of the year, the summer assessment, basically your pre and your post, attendance, and I love that engagement piece. There is no expectation at this time to document math intervention.
And then a question was also asked about taking attendance for both reading and math. Yes, you will mark that attendance for both camps. Keep in mind that sometimes you don't have both in the same scenario, but sometimes you will. And so we need to make sure we're monitoring whether somebody has attended reading, someone has attended math. It's just like if you had multiple periods where students changed classes, you're going to enter the attendance for these students. You're not entering it in the SIS, you're entering it in the intervention. And remember that you can bulk do that. So you can do all of your kids are here, and then just, it's simply one click. You just make a quick little click to move them to absent, or if they were partially here during that time period.
And keep in mind that you're doing that in the frame of reference of the actual intervention. So you've got dedicated time during these summer camps where they're going to be doing math content versus reading content. So when I go and mark attendance for the reading intervention, I'm looking at the frame of reference of, was this student there the entire time I was doing that reading block? Okay, so if they were there for all 60 minutes, then yep, fully present. But then when I mark for math, let's say the student's in both of them, then I want to come over here and go, okay, for the 60 minutes that I was in math, was that student there for the entire math block? Well, maybe they left early. Mom came and got them, and so they were only there half the time. Then you can put that partial attendance for math, but yet they were fully there for the reading. This is going to let you see that granular look at what they were actually there for, instead of just saying, oh, well, I'm going to take attendance once a day for everything, and you don't know were they missing part of which one. So this gives you that granular look of the intervention. Now, I know we're talking about summer camps here, but use this to kind of think about next year when you're actually in the school year and doing these tier 2 and tier 3 interventions, and you're talking about, were they there holistically for that intervention when you pulled them out for tier 2 and tier 3? Not were they there for the whole school day. Kind of going to ride that same train of thought in how you enter that attendance data in the summer camps.
There's a question in the chat too about parent reports. Is there a way to generate a parent report to be sent home at the end of camp that will communicate attendance and student data?
So there are no reports per se inside of Unified Insights. It's more of, I mean, you can do print screens of that student's card and of that student's information. If you want a report to have some kind of verbiage, we can create some form letters for you where if the data is in.
Since I just lost audio.
Oh, can anybody still hear us? It's WebEx.
Now they're hearing us.
Oh, perfect. I'm gonna tell you, WebEx will sometimes like just drop me out. For everybody who's been on my webinars, know that infamous 1 hour mark. It makes me disappear and then come back.
Just a couple of things. I just want to reiterate that, of course, all of the formative benchmark assessment reporting points should be included the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, the end of the year, and the summer. And I also, there's another question, Bonnie, for you. We have invited some students who do not have a script.
No worries.
Are they included in the intervention plan, or do we only report students with an script?
You may include them in the summer intervention section here. So if you have somebody that is attending summer reading camp, you want to have data on them, add them in here. We'll be able to, they do not have to have a student reading improvement plan. Now remember, student reading improvement plan students should all be invited because you've already determined that they have a consistent deficiency. However, there could be people that you've invited that do not have a student reading improvement plan. For example, when you get your ACAP data back, let's say there's a student who surprised you and they did not meet the cut score. Absolutely, they automatically get invited to summer reading camp because they did not meet that cut score. Great question.
And I just ran across one in the chat. Sandy, thank you for putting this in there because I completely forgot to mention this. She said, can you explain how closing out the year in SIS doesn't affect this new class I'm setting up at summer camps? So closing out or the school year ending. So what Unified Insights does, and the way they kind of described it to me is actually different now that I know how it really works. They always talked about how it froze after the last day of school. Well, it doesn't really freeze, but it refreshes each night based on whatever was entered in SIS with a date as of the last date of the school year. So even though we close out the year and we do end of year rollover and roll into the next year in SIS, Unified Insights is still pointing to last school year. So if I create that course, as long as you got the kids in there and you're not, withdrawing them out of the course, which you're not, they will keep feeding over in there, which also means, so let's say you're going through right now in May and you're figuring out all the kids who need to be invited to summer camp. Well, let's say that a week after school, you realize that these 3 kids need to be there as well because summer camp doesn't start for another week, but you forgot to add them in before the end of school. No problem. All you do is go back into the SIS into last year and add them into that roster because it'll keep looking back at what you had in there as of that last day. And so since the dates in that roster do not change, you are going to be good. PowerSchool has assured me that's not going to be any issue whatsoever with that. Scrolling through to see.
There's another question in the chat. Will there be a Dropbox or file upload option in Unified Insights?
They are working on that. I have been told that in the roadmap, I'm hoping by the end of the summer, we will have document attachment capabilities in here. So stay tuned for that so that we can get away from linking because I know y'all are hating that. No problem. That's why we're working down this path. But yes, we have been told that is a roadmap item and we will be able to see that.
If students make the 435 but still have consistent deficits on our yearly screener, should they be invited to summer camp?
I would say on that question, let's think about the spirit of the law. What do we want to have happen for these students? It's not just about checking the box that they can be promoted or retained. It's about making sure students have what they need to be successful. So I would absolutely invite them.
If a student was invited but you know that they are not going, do you keep the student on roster and mark absent each day or withdraw the student from the roster?
You do not have to keep them on your roster if they have decided that they're not going to attend. I know that just kind of muddies the waters with the number of students that you have in there. So if they've told you they're not going to attend, but you'll remember that in the Literacy Act page, there is a part invited but did not attend. So take that into consideration.
So a way to combat that is actually in the intervention. So if I have Stacy who's enrolled in this intervention and they come for 3 days and then decide they're not going to do it anymore, there is a completion status that you're going to do at the end of summer camp. This is going to be one of the videos of training that I'm going to send out to everyone. You will actually mark, there is a withdrawal reason for the intervention. So you will actually just say that they, withdrew, did not complete, instead of completed the intervention. So you'll have note that they were in the intervention and anything that you have for them for the time they were there, and then you can have that withdrawal date inside of the intervention. That should have been one of the things that was explained to you during the trainings across the state, is how you have that progression through the intervention, and after the intervention's over, you can mark those withdrawal reasons, and the completion reasons, so that you can kind of close that intervention out when summer is over.
Under the Numeracy Act tab in the SIS, do we complete the reports for students in grades 5 or all students in grades K through 5? Please complete the reports for all students in grades K through 5. I know there are specific expectations for the upper elementary grades. We are collecting information K through 5. We have presented that information to our state school board. There were positive results last summer. Honestly, we're looking forward to more positivity. We just want to honor the great work that's going on this summer. So yes, please be sure to document all students grades K through 5 in the numeracy tab.
Katie's asking, will the summer learning camp teachers need SIS access, or can they access roster through the teacher portion of Unified Insights? So Katie, they need access to the teacher portal, not the SIS admin portal, but the SIS teacher portal. They do have to log into the teacher portal like they do now to do their day-to-day functions, and then use that flyout screen to get over into Unified Insights.
Julie asked a question, is there going to be a general checklist for everything that is needed for the Literacy Act and the Numeracy Act tab and Unified Insight? There is a memorandum that is very, very close to posting. When that memorandum gets posted, it sits with your superintendent for 48 hours, unless your superintendent has decided to forward that on. But it goes over all of the reporting requirements, along with some help guides for the Literacy Act.
And one of the things that, as far as checklists, I have that Student Information Systems data calendar out there. And I do put in that checklist to make sure that you have the information for the Literacy and Numeracy Act. I'm fixing to add that in there. Entered before the end of school. As much as possible, if you're having the teachers do it, have them do it before school gets out, because once you do that end of year rollover process, those kids who maybe were in 2nd grade at this school roll to a feeder school, and now this school doesn't have access to enter it in. So try to be very intentional in your planning of when you say that those bits and pieces that can be done while that student is still enrolled in that school before they move to a feeder school, and just make it easier for you. For those of you who are asking, where's the rostering video and everything, it's all in the YouTube, but it's linked in this slideshow, which we are sending all of this out because we're recording this right now. When this is over with, I'm going to render the video. I'm going to email everybody back out this, and I'll also include all of this in the newsletter next Monday. So we will get all this right back to you so y'all can reference it as much as you need to.
We appreciate you taking this newness in stride, because we know it's challenging when you're met with new things. But we really do think in the long run, this is going to take a lot off your plate, because it's really going to be about doing things when they occur and to make movement on action for your students once we get through this initial part of the learning phase. So hang in there with it, and just remember, we're here to support you. So if there are questions you have, even if they've been said before, you feel free to reach out, and we'll guide you to the right tool to help you out.
Is the MTSS security setting for school admins working now? Not right now, Elizabeth. Power School has got another update that they are doing to the MTSS portion. I believe it's May 11th. There's a couple of things that's going to be turned on. One, there's going to be 2 dashboards, y'all, that are amazing on the student plans and interventions that will pull this together, even better than what you see inside the interventions when you're running it. That you'll be able to get some of that from. So just stay tuned because I'll be blasting that out in my emails. I know y'all are going to get a lot of emails from me between now and the end of school with everything, just kind of making sure we're all on our P's and Q's and know all these. But like Bonnie said, we are here to help and support. So if this is a lot to digest and you're like, I don't even know how I'm going to wrap my head around it, call us. Call one of us because we're here. We have regional team members here and our coaches, our ARS specialists, our OMI specialists. We will sit down and be thought partners with you and help you develop a plan for how this will work in your district. We will help you think through those scenarios you don't know to think of so that you can have the most successful summer learning camps for everyone. We know it's a lot to digest. That's why we wanted to get this out early so that y'all will have time to meet as districts, get all your principals together and see how can we make this work, be beneficial, but also meet all the reporting requirements that we have to have. Brenda, how do we receive so the newsletter that I send out is all based on education directory listserv. So make sure that your district has you labeled as a Power School contact, and you will receive all that you ever wanted to know and more about Power School because I send it out each and every week. And for anyone whose sound wasn't working the whole time, and I was getting some emails from some people saying they couldn't get in during this, the recording will be sent out so that you can watch it afterwards. So I hate if anybody had any technical difficulties, but we honestly, I think from the three of us, we really hope that you found this beneficial. We are wanting this to be as collaborative amongst us up here as it is with y'all in the districts. So hold our feet to the fire and, you know, tell us, give us our feedback, tell us how we can make this better for everyone across the state. And sometimes things don't make sense, and I completely get that. And sometimes we have to think in the lenses of bigger districts versus smaller districts that we have to make some concessions for. So we thank each and every one of you for attending this. We appreciate all of you. And we do have some FAQ documents that we are working on from each of the departments so that you will be able to see kind of everything that was asked and answered. I'll pull the chat down so we can see if there's anything we need to put in those that we haven't covered and get everyone taken care of. Chesley, will the video cover adding multiple teachers to a roster? Yeah, so Chesley, you'll put in one lead teacher and then everybody else pretty much becomes a co-teacher, and you can put as many of them in there as you need to. It's absolutely great. And if y'all need help with that, y'all know, reach out to me or to the coaches. Y'all, hugs, kisses. We love y'all. We appreciate you because y'all are the ones that are doing the hard work. Okay, we sit up here and give this collaboration and give advice, but y'all are the ones pulling it off, and we see it. Trust me, we see it, and we are very, very appreciative of each and every one of you. So hearts to all of you. We appreciate you. And if you need us between now and then, shoot us an email. We absolutely appreciate y'all.
Thank you so much. We appreciate everything that you do. Please know that we are here for you. I'm adding my heart to
Perfect. All right, I'm going to stop the recording so it can start rendering.